Russians give everything they have to capture at least one city in the east, which is Bakhmut, and they still fail. In the meantime, Ukrainians dramatically increased their pressure against Svatove, Kreminna, and reportedly Russians even started retreating from one of these settlements. And as a result of this, and just overall extremely low morale of the Russian soldiers, reportedly entire divisions started surrendering, and millions of people, mostly Russian soldiers, they just simply want to leave. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian, most likely still Canadian dude, and I hope you're having extremely wonderful winter holidays. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And our first video comes to us from the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, where you can see the local residents celebrating the Christmas underground in the subway stations. The dates for Christmas celebration are different for Catholic and Orthodox Christianity. The first ones celebrate on December 25th, while Orthodox Christians celebrated on January 7th, but due to recent separation of Ukrainian church, they allowed, let's say so, to celebrate the Catholic Christmas as well. Our next picture comes to us from Luhansk region, and as you can see right here, the local, let's call them authorities, gave out new license plates for the cars, which include the Luhansk region as a part of Russia. I'm not sure if these license plates have been issued in very small quantities, but I'm almost certain that in the near future there will be pretty big collectibles. Next we go to already familiar Engels Air Base, which is located in Saratov region, Russia. And as you can see from this video, reportedly 2 attacks have been recorded against this airfield. According to the Russian side, they were able to intercept the Ukrainian drone, but because of the falling debris, it eliminated, or how they called it, it inflicted the damage to 3 Russian soldiers incompatible with life. And reportedly, as a result of the second attack, a local small headquarters has been seriously damaged. This is not the very first attack against Engels airfield, and as a result of this, Russians relocated approximately half of their planes to another airfield, located in another part of Russia, which is... give me some time, I'm just scrolling here, it's not here yet, it's a little bit more, okay, here. It relocated to pretty much the eastern part of Russia, to the airfield with pretty interesting name, Ukrainka. As you can see, this new air base is located pretty far from the borders with Ukraine, but I'm pretty positive that there's still no panic. But nevertheless, unfortunately, Ukrainian side still reports that they do have the intelligence data that Russia prepares another mass attack against Ukraine in the near future. Specifically, what has been mentioned is that Russians lifted Il-76 A-50U reconnaissance plane, and several ships carrying caliber missiles have been spotted in Mediterranean, Black and Azov Sea. And as you can see from this picture, the total number of missiles estimated to be in these areas can be up to 100. And in case these attacks do happen, which hopefully they won't, Russians obviously expect the retribution by Ukrainians. And that is why, as you can see from this video, which came to us from the capital of Russia, Moscow, we can see that several air defense systems have been deployed. We even have this video from the Moscow city center, which shows us 4 military helicopters Mi-8. And then in this picture, which came to us from Voronezh region, we can see the instruction how to behave during the attack by an enemy, which local residents received with their utility bills. But just like mentioned previously, don't worry, there is still most certainly no panic in Russia. Just a couple more words about this potentially upcoming another mass attack by Russians against Ukraine, and then I'll give you a pretty interesting update from the south. So, like mentioned previously, most likely the majority of attacks will be carried out using caliber missiles. But then on this picture we can see the basic characteristics of a new Iranian drone Shahed-131, which Russia received recently and most likely is planning to use in Ukraine. But the Ukrainian air defense system constantly improves every single day as well. And for example, right here we can also see the basic characteristics of a Patriot system which the US recently pledged to Ukraine. This system has been proven to be extremely effective, and most likely it will be used to protect the sky above Kiev. And then on this map we can see the air defense coverage that Ukraine will receive as soon as they can get all the requested weapons, such as for example 8 NASAMS, 6 Hawk, 4 Iris-T, 1 Patriot and 1 SAMP. As a result of this, every single time the attacks by Russians are getting less effective, which most likely means in the near future we might see a drastic change in the course of war. And if you don't want to miss these events as soon as they start happening, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram because this week I'll try to post some interesting stories. Alright, and now let's get back to the south. And first of all, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russian elite forces called Spetsnaz are doing the reconnaissance on the right side of Dnipro River. Most likely they are just collecting the intelligence data on Ukraine's defenses, but to be honest I do not see any single sign of an upcoming offensive of Russians against this part of Kherson region. And at the same time, several days ago there was another mass shelling of Kherson city itself. Unfortunately, mostly residential areas have been affected, including one hospital, and reportedly Russians were even using the incendiary projectiles. And due to still ongoing, at least partial demonetization of my YouTube channel, I don't think I can show these videos in my today's episode. For this reason, I uploaded some of these photos and videos to my Discord, and the rest will be available on my Patreon. And if you want to see all this footage and at the same time support my channel, the links will be down below. And then as we go back to the south, in this video we can see that Ukrainian flag has been raised in Межводное settlement, which is located on Crimean Peninsula. Reportedly, this has been the work of Ukrainian partisans, and in case this is true, this basically confirms that Ukrainian forces are able to cross the sea and land on Crimean Peninsula. We then also have several other reports which claim that the large military convoys of Russians have been spotted traveling from Mariupol in the direction to Melitopol. And at the same time, Russians already started building the defense lines in the Zaporozhye region, specifically around Tokmak. And among these defense structures are the embankments, trenches and the dragon teeth, which previously proven to be extremely ineffective. And the reason for this, if you remember from my previous episodes, it is because Russians do expect that Ukrainians will open another front line in the Zaporozhye region, which will go towards Tokmak, with its ultimate goal, the liberation of Melitopol. Alright, and before I talk about the alleged retreat of Russians from Svatove Crimean region, allow me to give you a very quick update from the east. And first of all, according to the same report by the Institute for the Study of War, the main concentration of Russians was next to Bakhmut and Avdiivka. But reportedly, the private military company Wagner, which is primarily located in Bakhmut area, is suffering incredibly big losses. Which basically means that the pace of the Russian offensive in this area decreased significantly, and most likely they will even attempt to stall the combat activities. And speaking about Bakhmut, according to Ukrainian forces, the city itself has been fully liberated from Russian occupiers, and Russians suffered as many as hundreds eliminations per single day. But so far, this information has not been yet confirmed by the General Staff of Ukraine. And right now, let's briefly take a look at this map, which shows us the changes in the territorial control over the last week. And as you can see right here, Russians were slowly advancing to the north of Staromikhailivka, while Ukrainians were pushing Russians away from Mariinka. Next we go to Bakhmut area and its neighboring settlements. And first of all, Russians were able to advance a little bit to the west of Kurdyumivka, and later they were able to capture a big chunk of land to the west of Andriivka. But the very next day, Ukrainians took back some of its territory and Russians started pushing to the north next to Klishchinivka. And as we go to Bakhmut itself, every single day there were very slow advancements, both by Russians and Ukrainians, surrounding this city. And then, as we go to Svatove Kreminna area, we can see that Ukrainians were liberating small parts of this land to the west of this highway. And since we started talking about this area, let's really briefly talk about the alleged retreat of Russians from Svatove. And first of all, according to the head of Luhansk region, Sergei Gaidai, Russian occupiers, or quote-unquote authorities, they started fleeing from Svatove in the direction of Luhansk. And as you might already know it, historically, this was the very first sign of an upcoming total withdrawal. At the same time, according to yet unconfirmed reports, Ukrainians have been pressuring Russians in Kreminna, inflicting maximum massive damages. At the same time, Ukrainians reportedly started advancing closer to the city, and pretty much the same starts to happen next to Svatove. Which basically means as soon as Ukraine can establish the control over this highway, the resupply of Russian forces to the south of this area, specifically in Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, will be extremely limited. Because of such failures on the most promising front lines for Russians, as well as just a generally low morale of the Russian soldiers, a lot of them started sabotaging and quitting, leaving the army. And according to the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, at least 25% of Russian soldiers have attempted in one way or another to flee from the front lines. We even have this article which tells us that Putin himself acknowledges that he knows that Russian soldiers are surrendering their positions and run away. But what he says is that this does not happen in mass, and this is just not a problem. We can always just we can always just recruit more. Putin also mentioned that Russia does not have these so-called military camps or military prisons, and all of this is just a fake news. And then he added that this is normal for a regular person to get scared and run away, but most of these people return to the front lines voluntarily. But then once again, according to the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, according to their own data, the entire divisions of Russians, sometimes they do surrender as well. And according to their statistics, approximately 1.2 million people, which are mostly Russians and Russian soldiers, have contacted the Ukrainian website, which is called I Want to Live. One of the features of this website is that it gives you the instructions how to properly surrender to the Ukrainian army. And as of recently, there have been as many as hundreds of applications every single day. And one of the main reasons for them to do this, it is because, as they explain it, they have absolutely no idea what are they doing in Ukraine and what is the reason to fight in this meaningless war. Right now this war generally slowed down, most likely because of an upcoming winter holidays. But to be honest, I'm pretty positive that we might see some rapid developments in the beginning of next year. And if you don't want to miss any of these updates as soon as they start happening, just please once again subscribe to my channel. It only takes one click. And if you want to support my work, please consider becoming my channel member, use a PayPal link, or become my Patreon, where you'll receive the early access to the additional content. My November videos are still mostly demonetized, so this financial support means a lot. All the useful links can be found to the right and down below. Thank you so much for attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.